Cool. Looks like we're live.
Cool. Hey, Joe.
All right. We'll wait for, we're at 0 right now, but we'll wait for a couple of people to get in. But what do you want to talk about today?
I think, let me switch to my screen here. And I think let's start with alt-rank today. This is all on the fly, so let's just kind of get into it. So alt-rank, it looks at coins that are beating Bitcoin in price, as well as have outstanding social activity. And today it looks like Origin has been there. In fact, we know it's been there for a bit because we just did a post on it. It was actually up about 120% earlier. Really, really interesting what's going on there. We'll dig into that. We see Elrond, which their social following has been all over our Twitter the last few days, and we did a post on that yesterday as well. Everipedia, really, really great project. Love what they're up to. So these are the top 3 right now, and maybe let's get into each of these. I got some of these open on here, and so if we look at let's look at Origin's social volume. In fact, let's go look at the week. So we see that it's way, way up. There's 2,607 posts so far this week. We zoom out. This is a pretty recent project that we added just a few months ago. And you see it's just broken out to, yeah, all-time high. Really pretty crazy. How many posts per hour are there now? 110 in the current hour. So that's pretty crazy. That's a big.
So it didn't move. Price didn't move at all. And now we're seeing, even in just the last 24 hours, 87% move.
Yeah, and what's happened somewhere in here, we noticed that there was, they announced that Huobi is going to support them. And so they're going to be listed on Huobi's exchange. And that was a really big deal, and it's really up way big on Binance today. But the bigger thing with that is, you know, when you have a newer project, and this is a really fascinating project. I think love what they're doing. And you know, if you look at the general following, I mean, let's go back. These are single digit. This is hourly, but these are like single digit social contributors. These are individual users who are posting. And then to go from that up to, you know, within an hour's time, 100, 103, 106, and this is still probably calculating here. That's a pretty big deal for a new project. So really, really great big day for them. And what is it? It's blockchain powered e-commerce. And you know that, you know, if you look at something, I'm mentally trying to compare this to like a decentralized Shopify, at least in my head. And we know how successful Shopify has been. And it's a really interesting use case of blockchain technology. And we talk about payments a lot, right? And you know, everyone's talking about peer-to-peer transactions. Well, transactions to buy what? How do you actually manage? What if it's an actual commerce transaction buying products? How do you deal with all that? You know, even I know that their solutions even used by Brave. It powers the Brave store. So this is something even maybe we should look at for our own e-commerce if we want to do something in the future. We get so many requests around t-shirts and things like that. It'd be pretty cool to check this out further.
So is it around like developer community versus like more like Amazon, like own it all?
Yeah, you get your own solution. So you can build your own like store, basically, it looks like. And in fact, I'm even curious, I wonder if we look at the Brave store, if I just did a search here, Brave Swag, that's a great title, I like it. So this is using their solution, I believe. It says it's somewhere in here. Yeah, there you go, powered by Origin Shop.
Nice.
And so
what's the checkout?
Let's take a look. So you can, I'm gonna get a Brave mug and I'm gonna add it to my cart.
It's really fast.
That is really nice. So I'm not going to go further down into here. I assume, does it say what they accept? Assuming they accept BAT?
Yeah.
But pretty cool, Anyhow,
That's
really
rad.
big day for them. So it's a pretty great project right there that it's probably worth a watch. The other one that we were chatting through, is Elrond. So when we look at Elrond, it's up 25.82% today. It's our second highest alt rank, which this calculates every minute. So you may even see this update as we're talking. But there you go. So it's been quite the week for them. Again, going back to a normal hour, you got 10, you got 16. This was a bigger one, 133, 148. These are just social posts. So every time someone does a social post that mentions Elrond or the ticker or any variants of these, we pick it up. And so we're calculating all of that hourly. And all of a sudden, we have 1,087 post mentions within an hour. Actually, it looks like it's just climbing hour, and then we got 948, and it's still going up. And on top of that, we got 21.37%. How's the engagement? The engagement is still, it's not bad. 272,000 engagements, and
well, that one from the week ago is probably making it look a little bit smaller than it probably is.
Yeah, it's probably, and a lot of times we see this when there's a lot of different news, like a big headline comes out or something like that, and then it drops. We see that quite a bit, but this is encouraging because this is continuous engagement versus one big headline. This is the community really getting involved, and what that looks like, it's like deeper things going on. It's likes, it's retweets, it's comments, it's a lot of back and forth. It means that the community is engaged. It means that there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. But what's even more encouraging is these contributors, where we see that, you know, it's not a bad following. We got 4,307 this week, but I mean, look at this. The last hour was 453. If we just zoom out, let's go back in the 3-month and let's see how that's performing. And this isn't even calculating today yet. Today's going to be way higher. So that the following, the community's growing substantially, the volume growing huge within that community. So we see the community growing.
Look at market volume too.
Right, exactly. So all of it's coming up, and then we see kind of as this community like stands behind this project, we see things like a 24% daily move. And what is this? One thing that we went and did was I wanted to see their site. I wanted to see what it is they do, and it's really a high scalable, fast and secure blockchain platform. It's very new. So this came out just months ago, and I scrolled down here, and one thing I happened to notice is because we're fans of all these staking and delegation, and 25% yearly returns on your delegation, or if you're a validator, I think it's also 25%, but then it changes to 36 after their
How many
mainnet
do you
goes
need
live.
to be a validator?
Looks like 100,000, and then it just goes up from there. So in 1 million, so 1 billion. That'd be nice to have. That's a lot of money every day. That's pretty good. So pretty cool. Another one that's been standing out, we've seen it quite a bit here lately. We've seen Blockstack come back. So we've been following this one for years. I remember we went to the Blockstack conference. It must have been 3 years ago, up in San Jose.
Where was it? Like the Computer History Museum or something?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it's been real interesting to watch this evolve. And looking at Blockstack today, it's up respectable 4.74%. That's a decent gain. But what we're seeing, it's not a huge gain. And what we're seeing is, its current alt rank is 24 out of 2041. It was like 10 earlier or 9. And we like to see our alt rank fall prior to price moves. That's real strong, because what that means, it means that social activity is outstanding. And it's not necessarily like there's this big price jump and of course it's like worth watching. It's more like there's a lot of activity going on and it's growing. And so this is something to keep an eye on, because again, now it's up 5.97, but it's not a huge jump, yet we've fallen dramatically on this alt rank. And so it's definitely something to look at and keep an eye on in the coming days for sure.
Yeah, I feel like Blockstack is like, they've done everything right, for being here in the US and kind of, the Reg D and everything that they did. They got the coin out there. And it's just such a huge vision. It's such a big vision that they have and what they want to build. And it's like, it's kind of like Pied Piper-esque, like it's a huge thing to do, but it's like they've just kind of stayed consistent. They've pushed updates, and the community, I think, is underlying community is really good. What's that look on like that? What's your alt rank look like on like a 3-month for them?
All over the place. All over the place.
See, they've got some moments there where it's like it's kind of rallying, but yeah, there's not like I don't know if there's like, if you could call it a trend line there at all.
See, it's a newer project, and you see these big spikes in social volume. I mean, that's substantial. 4,462 mentions in a day. You see that when there's big announcements and big news, the engagement. So engagement, again, same thing. It spiked here. But it's sort of finding its place and finding its way. But it's a really, as you mentioned, it's a really strong project with a strong, like, the team's amazing. And they're trying to build a decentralized internet, basically, with these apps that you can build on their platform. One thing that I remember that I thought was really cool and is that they've got this universal login. And so you're sort of you're authorizing certain apps to have some information. You're no longer just giving your information away freely. You might remember I think they had a campaign up in San Francisco that was like, not don't be evil. They crossed it out and put can't be evil, because their platform isn't built to allow anyone to be evil, which I thought was pretty amazing. I think they put it across from the Google campus. Pretty cool. So
I think it's with them, it's like, and like the marketing behind that and like what the vision is. And I mean, I don't know, like if you remember when they were up on stage there talking a little bit about like back when like the dumb terminals, like IBM, and like what the dumb terminal was. And like in your office, you'd have this huge, machine the huge computer that was like the database, and each terminal had like, it was dumb. It was just a monitor that was there. And then somewhere along the line, we kind of moved towards this, all the power and computing and everything is done locally, like on your computer, and like CPU speed was going, slowly going up, and like Dell and like, Mac and everyone were trying to kind of increase that CPU speed. And then now we've kind of gone back to almost, if you think about it, it's like when you buy a new Mac, it's like, it's all in the cloud. And it's like, we're back almost to this like dumb terminal environment where, but all of your data is somewhere else. And I just remember someone was talking on stage, and they were talking about like, you can now be your own API, and all your data is sitting with you. And when you choose to connect up is when you can release that data out. And I thought that was a super powerful message that, everyone technically in crypto is, I feel like, working towards that in some capacity.
I totally agree. And, I think there's some just, very complex things to solve, but important. Like if you just pick on healthcare, for example, right? How many places is your information floating around in healthcare, right? You go to one doctor, the next doctor doesn't have it. They have different systems with different health records. Some are still on paper, believe it or not, and paying fines because they are.
Right.
Hospital has different things than the other doctors. It's a disastrous mess. Your health insurance is still sending you paper notifications saying this is not a bill. It's really a mess. And so I think identity is a tough nut to crack, but one of the most important, I almost call it a mission to solve. It's a very big deal.
Yeah. So we had a little request on here. One's for Compound, and then the other one was Casino Coin. If you want to take a look at maybe Casino Coin first.
Well, considering most of our tweets, I keep seeing Compound and Casino Coin keep being requested. Let's get to those in one moment. I want to cover one more, which is Everipedia. Okay. And so we're seeing Everipedia go up a bit today. Let me just refresh this here, but Everipedia is up 14% today. And when we when we look at what's going on here, we're seeing that social engagement, it's up to as much as 1.5 million engagements. So that's a lot. We're seeing that volume's coming up. So we had this big spike in here. And if I back up, we're kind of moving back up here, but this is a really interesting move and really a fan of this project. And so think of it as a almost an incentivized Wikipedia, because they've got their IQ token. I think we're on here. Nicholas built our page. There we are. And so we actually get a pretty good amount of traffic from this site, and it gives you the ability to update your content. And then a lot of the different, like the token itself is, again, more of an incentivization factor that helps power the site. So pretty amazing project. Really like what they're doing.
So looking at their word cloud, going down a little bit, yours looks a little bit different than mine, but I'm seeing
probably a different
Binance. Binance is one of the large ones. So now I'm looking down a little bit further. I'm seeing that looks like they were listed, or some sort of deeper integration.
So they're on Binance Research. So they posted something on here, recent news.
Because I was going to say a listing. This is not 2017.
Yeah.
I didn't know that listings are pushing prices up.
Yeah, so they were listed with Binance. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So pretty cool.
Look at that. I mean, looking at the 1 week candle, like against something like social volume, I mean, that is a huge candle.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I mean, we've gone from what, 1845 went up to, where are we here? 34, 38. I mean, wow, that's amazing. That's a big move. And some of these pumps in the alts are back. I mean, it's been an unbelievable last like few months, really. I mean, we've started seeing this with Digibyte. We saw this with Zelica. Now we're actually seeing some of this with Chili's, which I know I talked about last week, but man, there's some really extreme engagement going on here. It's like pretty amazing. They're about to launch the Barcelona token. And we see these huge spikes of social volume. I mean, to put this into perspective, keeps coming up. This engagement keeps doing that. I mean, this is like, I'm talking, I think we were just looking at 1.5 million engagements. This is 118 million engagements. And so this just keeps going and going. And now it's up 8% again today. So,
well, you could see, I mean, it was kind of like we were talking a little bit about last week, which it's like Bitcoin is so seemingly correlated to what's happening from like these macro movements and US equities, and, to some extent also other global equity markets like Japan. But it's like, it's like zero interest rates, and it's pumping that, and you're trying to find other places to find some alpha and to invest outside of just macro movements. It's like, I do think Bitcoin's going to uncouple, and, something's going to change here, but it's like, you have to dive into these alts if you're going to go find something that's, going to drive something uncorrelated to everything else in the market, or unless you're just going to start, if you're just usually investing in equities, you're just going to try to short stuff, but it's like, that's not a long-term solution. And that's actually not, unless you're super professional, that is not advised.
Yeah, it's interesting because, notice how we haven't talked about Bitcoin. I'd love to talk about Bitcoin all day.
Yeah,
it's been boring. It's been a boring last couple of weeks. It goes up, it goes down. It has these massive spikes, and then an hour later, a massive spike lower than where it was before. And so you get these manipulated runs with, undoubtedly it's whale money, right? I mean, this is big money. You don't move Bitcoin, 300 points in an hour. With private investors, it's like private investor money.
Yeah, and I mean, I know like Grayscale has had so many inflows, and like I've read a lot about that. And I have to go do my homework a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, are they buying Bitcoin dollar for dollar with inflows?
I believe they are, and then there's a fraction of it that goes and hits GBTC. It likely means that GBTC is they have to keep that there's like an equation, there's like a ratio. So that means that there's probably a lot of shares of GBTC being purchased. And that also accounts for why there's such a premium that you're paying. I won't even get into the GETH or whatever, like, which is a massive premium.
Yeah.
But people will pay that.
Yeah. I mean, if someone in the comments does know the answer to that, like, are they buying one for one based on cash inflows? Like, obviously there's management fees and, like, you know, they have a 2% annual fee, I know. But if they're not, like, technically, and there's a lot of money inflowing into that instrument, I mean, technically then we start to kind of spider off into like a synthetic instrument where, you know, that technically inflates the supply of Bitcoin. You know, if you start to kind of create some of these synthetic instruments, it takes away from the true, like, you know, anti-inflation measures of, like, quote unquote, what a closed-end fund would be, which is just interesting. And I don't know if that's the case, and I got to go do a little bit more homework. But, you know, things like that start to come online in not just, you know, the US or other places, and you've got this synthetic. I mean, I know, like, they've got one in Canada too that got greenlit. Who did that? 3IQ, I think, did that. Yep. So another place where you can go buy, but whether or not it's 1-to-1, I don't know. So just interesting.
I did read recently that like Grayscale had bought more Bitcoin, or almost as much Bitcoin that's been mined since the halving. So alone, despite the rest of the market. But one thing that, you know, before we get into casino coins, so whoever requested that one, sorry, I'm gonna come right back to it. But, you know, if we look at contributors on Bitcoin, so one thing I've been looking at recently, and we have some things around the halving. I just want to bring in like the 1 month. So, you know, we talk about mainstream adoption. Well, the people at least that are talking about Bitcoin, I mean, this does not look great. This looks like the community isn't growing. This looks like it's the same, and this is a lot of people, but we're talking in a day there were 43,653 individual contributors that posted 115,592 posts. So that was just, you know, it was yesterday. So the thing is, you would want to see, I mean, if we go back, and I know I covered it before, but this was a Cash App tweet that went crazy. This was the halving. So, you know, yes, we're up year over year. Like, if I look at, let's go way back. Let's go like a year. And if I look here a year ago, sure, it was 73.38, and we were all still talking about Bitcoin a year. The community was smaller in general. And then we move forward today, 43,000, but it's been relatively flat for the last month. So I just bring that up because, you know, you want to see the community growing, and we keep hearing, and it's a nice buzzword for a lot of individuals, especially leaders at various crypto companies, to talk about mainstream adoption. But when we look at the actual individual contributors, it's not really going up that much right now. And so, you know, I would say, you know, versus say, like, I'm going to compare this, yes, smaller scale, much smaller scale. But let's look at Chainlink. And if we look at social contributors on Chainlink, and let's go back a year on that one. So a year ago, we had triple digits, right? 172, 200 people. And now on a daily basis, this is not just a one-off, with 2,805 people, individual users yesterday talked about Chainlink. And they posted 6639 posts. They're very, very active. That means some people are posting 2 or 3 a day. And so if we look even, I want to look even closer. But like, we see some of these other projects just growing, yes, from a much smaller base, but there's an upward momentum going with a lot of these projects talking like endlessly. Like Chainlink, this community is unbelievable. Like if you just go on Twitter or Reddit and you look up Chainlink posts, it's endless. They're posting constantly. And so, you know, it's that mixed in with technology. You know, their decentralized Oracle service mixed in with a crazy big community that's growing. that together creates an upward funnel. And the challenge with Bitcoin is, again, like, everyone seems to be knowing about it, but at least the community that's talking about it is relatively flat at the moment. And so that may change. And it's certainly over a year it's grown, but this is a pretty, it's like waiting for a breakout some way, one way or the other pretty soon here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's kind of like we've talked about a little bit before, and talking to some of the the crypto hedge funds and some of the larger hedge funds, and most of the cryptocurrency hedge funds are relatively small, like some as far as like 5 million assets under management, maybe up to 50 to 100. And then you start talking about what is going to be the next thing that kind of drives this up, if it's going to have the kind of parabolic move that it had before, or something in that range. Because that's whether you like it or not, and you're holding Bitcoin, you are trying to have some sort of hedge against everything else that's happening out there. But you're also, you're pretty optimistic that, the closed end nature of it's going to drive the price up much more rapidly than other things that you're holding. And so it's like, when you think about what's that next leg up, it's like, it has to be something a lot larger than what would take to drive something like a Chainlink or, Casino Coin, which we're going to talk about, or Elrond. It's going to take a big change. And whether that's like, something as crazy as like a sovereign country moving over to something like Bitcoin, or, the price to get to a spot and the volume to get to a spot where, like, people like 2 Sigma could actually make an investment and make a move. It's probably even too small for them to even touch anything yet. They could be investing on the side or personally, but they might not be making, huge investments in it. So it's like, it still just seems like it's more of like a grassroots, like just more people investing, more people figuring it out for this thing to really, but that's not going to be this, 10,000 point move up.
You bring up a really good point, and it's that, Bitcoin it's like a macro indicator, and the altcoin moves are like a micro indicator. They operate and function a lot more like startups, and Bitcoin is like this macro level thing that moves based upon the kinds of things you're mentioning. I mean, we posted this last night because we looked at a word cloud on our site. I mean, you look at some of these terms like government, borrowing, crash, bailout loans, rescue, banks, economy. Like, you get into these things. This is not the kinds of terminology you're seeing on Chainlink or Ethereum, even, barely. And so it's just a different level of focus that's on this. And so again, curious where this goes in the next few weeks. But if we were to go back and look at our site, where did I have my Bitcoin up there? We're trying to find our way right now, and you see prices doing the same thing as social contributors, social volume. Look at that again, pretty flat, just trying to find its way. It's up, it's down. If you look at this on a daily basis, it's like there's these 24-hour global cycles that just repeat, and sometimes it's lower and sometimes it's higher. And it's just like a cycle back and forth, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, they got a lot of, there's a lot that needs to change, I think, for that narrative to, because like you're saying, that right now it's like the narrative out there is anti-government, hedge against what's happening. That's what people are saying, yet the price is literally reacting, in correlation with US equities, So it's like, that can't be the narrative anymore for Bitcoin. It needs to be something different, and it is something different. It is not digital gold. Sure, it's a store of value, but it acts in no way does it have the same properties as gold, in its feature set, and its its ability and the way that it was built, and it's nothing like that. So it's like Bitcoin needs to find its new narrative, and like we've talked about this before, where it's like, Bitcoin doesn't have a CMO, Bitcoin isn't going to do a Super Bowl commercial, it is its own thing, and that's what makes it great. And so, but it takes the entire community to work in tandem to make that narrative change. And, I think it'll get there for sure. It's just going to take some time, and I think people are still figuring it out.
It also requires applications that are focused on mainstream adoption versus for the same crypto investors that go to the same crypto conferences, that go to the same crypto now online meetups. We have to branch out. We have to have tools and almost step away from blockchain and crypto and just focus on benefit to a much broader audience. You know, like Tesla, for example, they did not build a better electric car. They built a better car. So it's got to be along those lines. It's got to be something that makes sense versus we have a faster blockchain. We have a better blockchain. We're more decentralized. Most people do not care. And those people are the same people already in the space. So trying to get mom to buy some crypto is not going to work until there's more mainstream applications that she cares about.
Yeah. I mean, there's the appreciation, but yeah, you're right. It's like at some point the narrative, I remember watching that like old debate between like Eric Voorhees and Peter Schiff, and like Eric had a great, you know, he had a great intro, but it was at the end of the day, it was like just the words better money, you know, and it's like getting away from being better money and being a better gold or being a systematic hedge, you know, versus something that's like, well, no, why can't it just be better money? You know, and it's like, even with, you know, in some of these, you know, so maybe some of the countries that have seen like insane inflation or aren't the United States, aren't off the US dollar, it's like, and John's getting his audio figured out, so don't worry about that. But like, why can't it be usable better money? Like that's what I think is the most interesting in the change that needs to happen. But I don't know. That's just what I've been thinking about, is like a better money that could be used, and it can be used across borders. And, you know, so what if there's a somewhat of a kind of appreciation risk there, like especially in the US where we're now going to be dealing with some pretty insane inflation. It's like, why wouldn't you, you know, put your money, like you want, like literally you want the least amount of US dollars in your bank account as humanly possible to like combat that. So why not have zero and use Bitcoin, you know, even for now. Unfortunately, if you have to use it with a credit card and it's not accepted anywhere, it's still, you know, you're still in a better scenario than you would if you're just holding USDs. Yeah. You're on mute, but you can get off of it and we can probably talk about, hold on. You're having some technical difficulties. You're still muted. But
how about there? Can you hear me?
There you go. You're back on.
Okay, cool. Sorry if there's an echo or something. My AirPods died on me, and I don't have a backup right now. It's fun.
It's super
all right,
clear.
I will mention Casino Coin here. So we actually get a lot of requests for this. They do have a pretty active community, and you know what's funny is I'll go back to back into getting into crypto back in like 2013, 2014. My own perspective, being someone that loves to go to Vegas and places like that. I thought crypto would start here. Like I thought, wow, like casinos, it's just such a natural fit. You know, it seems like that would be the first early adopters to try something. I mean, they already have loyalty programs, they have chips.
Yeah.
Like money is messy and dirty, and there's a whole host of issues with like, you know, security, and you know, casinos get robbed. I mean, like there's so many different things that make sense from an efficiency standpoint. Yeah. And then there's this ecosystem around it of like the hotel rooms and restaurants and parking and nightclubs and drinks, and like there's so much that goes into that. And you know, Casino Coin is pretty fascinating actually. Like when you look at what they've got, they're building this whole, they're focused on online casinos, but like they've got this whole ecosystem that they're building around that space. Pretty interesting project. And I think more than anything, you know, we've seen social activity trend with the price over a long period of time. And we've posted on this one quite a few times in the past. Earlier here when it was moving up, we were seeing a lot of growth. But you know, they get some decent sized social engagements, like 2.68 million is a lot of engagement. So when a story comes out, there's a lot of people engaging and reading with it, meaning they have an active community. We looked at their contributors. they're down to about a couple hundred people a day, but when we were higher and everyone was talking about it, we got up to 668. One thing that I'd love to look at here is their correlation rank. So typically, and what this looks at, it in general, it's looking at the correlation of price to social activity in general. We have a lot of different metrics underneath it, but we rank it from 1 to 5. And they're typically up in this 3.5 range in here. It looks like they got to 3.7. And so that means that their social activity is, in general, it's pretty correlated to their price. Pretty much I'd say that's probably what we'll look at today on this one.
What's their market cap up to?
That is not passing in right now. I don't know if it's empty on our system here. We have to take a look at that one. Social contributors.
Yeah, okay. So volume, 24-hour volume around like 5 Bitcoin.
Yeah, something like that. So interesting.
Yeah.
Cool project though.
Yeah, we featured them a while ago when we saw, I think they had some releases and stuff, but I haven't seen a ton from that. I mean, I could imagine the environment right now being, whether it's, this is kind of built for more startups, or if they're actually be interested to see if they're actually like selling into some of the larger casinos that are out there. I mean, I know some of the casinos themselves have some skunk works going on where they're kind of testing out and building their own, they're actually building their own blockchain. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing, but it kind of reminds me, I mean, I'm not, it's like an industry specific application of something that, I think sometimes is solid, but it's also, when you're picking out, one use case over the other, there's got to be something that's special about what they're doing that makes it worthwhile for that space. But I would love to see them go after, mid-sized casinos with this.
Agreed. Yeah. No, it's a space that seems to be ripe for disruption, right? I mean, like the technology is definitely getting to an interesting place, and we're gonna have a reboot of gaming across the whole world, anyways. So let's see what happens, right? I mean, it's gonna be interesting. We got Vegas opening up again, which that's a very interesting thing to watch. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone stays nice.
You gotta be in a special place. Like I've seen some of the videos of people like playing blackjack, and it's like with a mask on and like the window in front of them and like the window in front of someone else. I'm like, don't they like, do they not have like legitimate good like blackjack options online? Like they've got to be a good like good option for that, because it's like, man, would you just want to sit there with that thing right in front of your face? But I don't know. I guess there's no replacement for like something like craps where you're like physically rolling the dice. But like now, are you gonna switch out the dice each time? I don't know.
I doubt that, but I mean, people want the free drinks, man. I mean, they'll sit there, they'll spend $500 to get one free drink in a 45-minute period. So it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be an interesting summer to see what happens in Vegas. But I don't know, we'll see. I did want to point this one out, Celsius, really a interesting amount of social activity. I mean, in the last 6 months, almost 360,000 social mentions. At first, I thought we even had a bug in our collection, because we were like, is there really 19,000? Are we pulling up temperature-related Celsius information? And no, there was no bug.
Yeah.
Our collection's right. And so, social engagement is coming up pretty high too. I mean, this is huge. This is, we had on this date here, 20,000 almost, or 21 million almost social engagements. Be nice to follow that, considering that, we had like back down in here, increasing social engagement way before price moved up. Curious to see the alt rank on that one too. It's also been trending down and been very low for a long period of time. So, if I were to zoom in a little more on that one, looking at the 3 months, I mean, you would have seen, anytime you see this many times where the alt rank is falling, that's something to take note of. So even though it fluctuates this much, because it fluctuates every minute, that is very, very interesting. And if you were to see this on a shorter term basis, you'd see that it would have been a nice signal to follow. So pretty cool.
Yeah, this is an interesting one too, because it's like peer-to-peer lending and loans, and there are other metrics that we can start to kind of gauge this business on, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how companies like this start to kind of publish some of their potentially financial data, potentially like KPIs around like usage and other stuff like that, because it's like that seems to be like a direction that could help indicate whether or not like there's more value, obviously outside of just kind of like inherently understanding like the size of what's happening with the community and everything. So that's a really interesting one to look at.
It really is. I mean, especially like if you live in the United States, for example, a lot of people have this day trading perspective, but if you're trading a lot, you're also getting capital gains. And if you're actually paying your taxes, and everyone should pay their taxes, you have that issue of trading. But if you're someone that is sitting there and, if you want to actually like earn money on your crypto, and use it instead of paying your taxes, because you go to sell that Bitcoin you might have bought 2014, 2015 or whatever, you're going to pay taxes on it. And if you're trading a lot, you're going to pay capital gains and taxes on it. And so if you just think about solutions like this where you can take loans out, I mean, in here, like as low as it said 3.47%. So if you have, say, $100,000 in Bitcoin and you want to loan it out, and you want to take a loan and you're not selling your coins, that's a really nice thing to do if you need money, as opposed to selling your coins and paying, who knows what you're going to pay, depends how much you're selling. But I find this fascinating from like if you're trying to not pay a bundle of money in taxes and lose a lot of your crypto, and like a lot of times people are selling their coins just for their cash. So this is actually pretty cool. I'm excited to watch this space evolve for sure.
Awesome. We have one question, and then we're probably going to have to go.
Yep.
Says, how do we get people around the age of 20s, 30s to be interested in crypto? I would say that's probably who is interested in crypto right now. You probably even a little bit younger than that. I think when we saw Tim made a good comment on CNBC a while ago where it was like if you just gave $10,000 to someone, in their 20s or in their 30s, and you said you have to invest it, I think you'd be surprised at how many of those people would just put it into Bitcoin or put it into crypto. And then, another comment was, to most financial advisors, if they knew, the percentage of net worth that was invested in crypto for millennials, they would be just absolutely petrified. But that just shows, where the belief is and the investment horizon that someone that age has and what they're looking to do and what they're interested in. And so if anything else, it's an indicator that I think the rest of the world should be looking at, that these people are heavily invested in, these instruments that are completely different, and look at the world and how detached it is today, and look at things like, FANG, and now that's what 30 to 40% of the market cap of like the entire S&P, and it's 30 to 40 or 25 to 40% on any given day, the daily trading volume. I mean, people would give Bitcoin shit for being 60%. It's like when the entire US stock market is literally not that much different. You've got people speculating on things like Hertz right now, and it's like, people joking that like Hertz should just do an ICO. Like, I mean, that's basically what they were trying to do. So it's a really, I think, interesting, moment to just think about, the younger age groups and how much more they've actually invested into crypto, and why not? They might understand this better than they understand everything else, and people invest in what they understand.
What's funny is, I always look at everything as about timing, and it's one thing to say like we need we need individuals in their 20s and 30s into crypto. I broaden that out and I'd say we need more minorities, we need more women in crypto, and we need to embrace that in ways that resonate with them. And I'd say there's that as one thing, and I'd say that's a challenge to the space. Is like, how do we do that? How do we broaden who we're talking to, so that we're having more of the world participate? Because this is supposed to be for more of the world. And so that's one side to this. The other is, I'm looking at right now, I don't know if my screen's still up, but I'm looking at the top 6 projects right now, right there. So Origin, Elrond, Hedera, Everipedia, Chili's, Aave. I think that's how you say it. All of those, I remember hearing about all of them coming soon. And, we went through this phase of like, there's a promise of how neat this is going to be in the future. Just participate in this ICO, and in 4 or 5 years, they're going to start to have technology coming. And I look at those top 6 projects, just random. They just happen to be there right now. They're delivering. They're all delivering. And so when you talk about participation, I think.
Oh, you were breaking up right as I think you were finishing the most epic thought ever. All right, everyone, we've lost John. We're going to end this thing for the week. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we're going to try to maybe do this every other day, every day, once a week at least. So I appreciate everyone hopping onto this. And we're going to take a screenshot of John right here, and we're never going to forget that. Thanks, everyone.